What's up, Sports Spectrum? It's your host, Matt Forte, with my man, Jason Romano,
Yes,
on the
sir.
ones and twos, as always. And this is our Christmas special we're talking
Yeah.
about here. And we wanted to answer some of the fan questions, which has been super fun, very in depth. Some great questions coming from y'all. If you're listening and you've sent in questions before, please continue to send them in. We'd love to answer them and to dive into those topics. But Jay, I know you have the first list of questions. You've said you don't want to give me any hints or anything, so I don't know what these questions are. But I
That's the
trust you.
beauty.
I
Yeah, I know
trust
you
you.
trust me. I know you do. And I think it's more organic when we do the questions in some ways and just have you answer them as you hear them.
Yeah.
I do want to basically say that, people have tweeted these questions to us, but if you want to email them, you can just email me, jason@sportspectrum.com, and we'll try to answer these, even, when it's not necessarily a scheduled show like today. We'll still try to get in some questions in there. We've had some great feedback recently that I want to give everybody a shout out on too, that I sent you, Matt. Just some people that have been listening to these conversations and some of the things that we've done previously. On the podcast. So excited about that. But here's the
Yeah.
first question. It comes from Keith McKay. He says, I think it's easy for people to see athletes and other successful people as being above or not as affected by a lot of the trials that God's people face. He says, Matt, I think you can reach a lot of folks by talking about the times you, or maybe some athletes that you were around, have been spiritually attacked and how God saw you through. So maybe you can share something that comes to mind of, if there was any, of a spiritual attack that you felt like was coming at you, and maybe just how the Lord was helping you through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And see, I mean, this is a great example. I mean, look at this question.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably one of the best questions that I've been asked. And one of the questions that I love to address, because when it comes to professional athletes or athletics or sports entertainment, which we talked about before, how it's becoming more entertainment than sports, there is the tendency for fans and family, and even you as an athlete or professional yourselves, to put that person or yourself on a pedestal, uh, spiritually speaking, and in the worldly speaking. And at its core, it's called idolatry. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to be a role model. It's a good thing to be a good role model, but I don't want to be anybody's idol, because I will always fail you. No matter how perfectly I think I can live my life, I will always fail that, because we have a perfect model and we have to model him, and we'll fall short. As
Yes.
Romans tells us, we'll all fall short, but it's the grace of God that helps us out. So to answer that question, um, yeah. So I mean, athletes are humans. We are. It's almost this picture, because you're on TV or because you do a certain thing, that changes your identity. It has a double effect, a twofold effect, where it could change your thought or your process or your perspective of your own identity, which is a huge thing that we try to preach and teach on in professional athletics ministry,
Yes.
through Sports Spectrum, through PAO, all of that. That
Yep.
your identity is not in what you do or the accomplishments that you have made, or the accolades that you're given, but your identity has to be rooted in Christ. But then at the same time, fans look at you and they love. I mean, I get it. It's fan is short for fanatic. You're a fan of what of the team and the specific player. And there's been many times I've seen on social media, people will see an old highlight and they're like, "Man, this was the good old years when I was a teenager growing up, and this is what made me love Bears football. This is what made me
Yeah.
love running backs." And I get it. That's awesome. But there's so much more than that. There's so much more to the human being than that as well. And I think we sell ourselves short and we sell other people's potential short when we only see them in that light, as if they're perfect and that they're incorruptible, that they have no pains or any issues that real life brings. Um, we talked about it on another podcast. More money, more problems.
That's right.
It is the truth. The guys who are in athletics, and people have no grace or sympathy for them, because they say, "Oh man, what kind of problems can you have? You make millions of dollars. You're
Mm.
on TV. You're famous." And it's like, yeah, but those things don't eliminate you from the issues of life. Actually, it puts you in a larger target because your life is under a microscope. I
Yes.
think a few weeks back, uh, a couple of players, their security, like their privacy, was invaded, and you live a public life,
Yeah. Joe
and
Burrow.
they Joe
Yeah.
Burrow, and then
Mahomes, I think. Yeah.
Tua said that he has armed guards that are around his house because when he leaves home and is on a away game or something like that, you never know what can happen. I mean, Sean Taylor, they
Yeah.
broke into
Right.
he lost his life that
Yeah.
way.
And Matt, I know people that change their names with mail and things like that because it's just, you just don't want to deal with people potentially through the post office or whatever,
That's
even
right.
just seeing something that comes from, Patrick Mahomes gets a package. Well, they're going to know right away where he lives, and that now you're becoming an even bigger target.
Yeah, so like that is a major issue that I guess from the outside in you won't necessarily just think about.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, there's the you're not obsolete or excluded from the trials and tribulations of life. As my grandfather would say, as my father would say, as my current pastor Charlie Dace would say, if you haven't been through something, keep on living. Just
That's
keep on
right.
living,
Yeah.
because the billows of life, the waves of sometimes you're here, sometimes you're there, the issues, they will come. And the only thing that is stable is that foundation in Jesus Christ. And so that's what's so important to me. And so getting back to the question, has my faith ever been under attack? Of course it has. Many a times. For one thing, an example, Jesus taught on money the most. He talked about money more than sin. He talked about money more than any other topic,
Because he knows.
morality, because he knows that
Yeah.
the love of it is the root of all kinds of evil, meaning it's like a root that branches out all kind of different sinful bad things that can go on in your heart, and
Yeah.
greed and lust and all these things. So when it comes down to, one of the attacks, I think, was when I was going through the contract situation with the Bears, where um yeah, you could say it's unfair. Uh, you should have been paid more, or this and that. This guy's getting paid more than you, and he's a punter, or all the excuses to let that seep into my heart and grow roots as far as being bitter and upset, and just an angry, spirit about you, and not seeing the grace that God has given you to actually have talent and play that in the NFL and walk that out, and to relatively be safe from devastating injuries. Uh, I mean, 10 years as a running back, one of the most renowned positions for injuries, right?
Yeah.
And I never had a broken bone. I never had an ACL or a uh, Achilles tear.
Hmm.
None of these major issues that you see guys have. And I've had surgery. I've had things and nicks and knacks, and obviously because it's the game, it's physical. But to think about that, like the grace of God to keep me through basically 25 years, because I started when I was 7,
Right.
of physical football on different levels, and to be relatively in really good health. I mean, concussion wise too. I never had I used to mess with people and be like, I never had a concussion. I don't remember one. But no, it's the truth. It's the truth.
It's a funny joke, but
I never,
I know what you mean.
but no, it's the truth, because it's serious too, though. Because while I was playing, the CTE discovery that came up and all kind of things, and the seriousness
Yeah.
of concussions, and I'm glad that they took it more serious. But I've been God has shielded me from those things, right? But that doesn't mean there aren't other lessons to be taught. Where one of the main ones I look back and I appreciate was going through that whole contract negotiation and situation, where I really got to see that what the Lord has for me, what the Lord has for you, is for you. And there's no man, no woman, there is no person earthly wise who has the power to open or close those doors. It's literally the Lord who
Yeah.
controls your destiny and His plan for your life. And if I'm being honest, other things, um, temptation wise, I mean, when you become a pro athlete, people automatically say or think you're a millionaire. They don't realize that you get taxed at 50%. So you get half of that goes to Uncle Sam, and then um, other than that, the other thing is you have everything at your fingertips.
Right.
You are young, and I'm gonna be honest, you're young and you're dumb. You're dumb. You don't
Hmm.
know everything, but you think you do. You have all this vitality and energy, and it's a recipe for disaster. I mean, how terrible, just like the verse in Mark says, how bad or what is it that a man gain the entire world and lose his soul? God didn't bless us with the talent and gifts to be athletic and play that, to go and to buy a bunch of cars and big houses and to live this fancy, you know, type of life, which is not a bad thing. But when it becomes your identity, you become just like the man in the Bible that says it's the rich man and Lazarus. He had no name. Lazarus had a name.
Yep.
The rich man, he was described by his love. He was the rich man. So,
Yeah.
and we know how that ended for him. So when it comes to being spiritually attacked, uh, I say the best thing to do is to always be on guard,
Hmm.
and have the peace of God protect your heart and your mind. Because if something can get to your heart, it can get to your mind, and the other way around. If it gets to your mind, it gets down into your heart, and that's all you have spiritually, really, to fight those temptations, whether it be through the eyes or what you hear, what you listen to. There's so many things that are under attack.
Yeah.
And then you could bring into when you get married. The devil doesn't want to see a flourishing marriage. And let's be honest, in the professional athlete realm, I can only speak for football specifically, but it's high across the board. 2 to 3 years post retirement, it's 80+% divorce and 80+% who go broke, and that's
Why is that,
a
Matt? Why
fact.
is that
I think
in your eyes?
I think a major factor in it starts with the root and the base foundation of identity. So what is your identity placed in? So once the game is gone, who are you?
Right. And many
Once
of
you
them, they put all of their
hmm
chips into this football world and then it's gone.
that I think when you talk about issues and being spiritually attacked and stuff like that, there's all the fruit parts of things like uh, you know morality issues or lust or greed or anger. All of those are offsets of a major root, which when we get to something like that, you want to attack the root, because if you look at, anything in nature, it starts with the roots. If the roots
Totally.
are bad, everything else is bad. So
Yep.
when it comes to that, I would say, um, when you don't know your identity, when you don't know who you are outside of the sport, you just start trying things. You start just doing things, and then people can, and there's a lot of pride in that. Where as a former professional athlete, I need to do this and be just as successful off the field in this business area, or doing this and doing that. I need to be the same level as I do as I did while playing, which is a great aspiration. It's a great standard to keep. But sometimes you got to understand, you got to talk to God and let him, because he has the plan for you in this season that I'm in. What do you want me to be doing?
Right.
Sometimes God may sit you down and just be like, I just want you to be. I just want you to talk to me
Yeah.
in
Be
this season.
still.
I don't want you
Yeah.
to do all of these things. You can't do before you are. You can't be what you're supposed to be by just doing a bunch of different things. And that gets us in trouble. When you don't know your identity, you just start trying stuff. It's like, well, you know what? I think I should be a movie star. I'm going to start acting. It's like, okay, well, go for it. But
Yeah.
then,
You
you
did that,
know,
didn't you? Didn't you do a little acting here and there? Weren't you
yeah,
thinking
yeah. I
about
was
that?
I was called to and
Yeah.
asked to be in an episode of Chicago Fire.
There you go.
And then once seeing how long it took, I was literally on screen for like 15 seconds, and it took 3 days of filming for it. I was like, this ain't for your boy. And it was 23 degrees outside in Chicago,
Oh,
and you sit out there for hours. I
gee.
remember the calling, that makeup or whatever, which I don't think I didn't even take a bunch of makeup. I was like, I don't really want all of that
The
stuff on
powder
you.
and all that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've seen that.
but it was like 4:50 a.m. I was like, yo, this is ridiculous. Like I remember going to 5 a.m. workouts in college, and
Yeah.
this is kind of rough, but I knew that wasn't for me.
Right.
But it was fun to do and experience. But when you don't have that identity rooted and listening and having your I guess having the perspective of I'm going to pay attention to what the Lord is saying in my life. What he's speaking to me? What is he saying?
Yeah.
And I think that comes from a root of humility, which is always good. Um, because when it comes to pride, that will lead you to thinking that you need to do all of these things to become what you're supposed to be or to make something new of yourself. Um, but yeah, those things, the temptation of uh, all of those things that we talked about, but then the temptation of having everything at your fingertips. A lot of people love to give you stuff as a pro athlete.
Yeah.
And I tell all the young guys too, just because, you know, that girl looks at you and she, like, you didn't just, you haven't always been cute. You just got cute because you played in the NFL. They know who you are. They know who
Yeah.
who you play for, your contract and all of that stuff. They may pretend like they don't, but you got to understand that, it's like you didn't just become handsome overnight.
Yeah. Well, by the way,
And
I want to get into that on the next episode that we do like this, because I want to talk about, there was a question that came in about you and Danielle and your marriage and dating, and then how you were even able to find your wife as an NFL player. I think there's a lot of fruit and a lot of encouragement that you can give to people just struggling or whatever that might be in relationships. And, like you said, man, 80% of people who 3 years after they're playing in the NFL are divorced and broke. Like, that's just so sad to even hear that stat, but it's real. It's reality.
yeah,
So let me throw a couple more things at you here before we wind down. The most common question was, what do you want to see out of the Bears the rest of
yeah,
this year?
of
Because
course.
they fired their coach, and they're in a kind of what do we do mode right now, and Caleb's their quarterback, and I think people agree that, like, let's let this guy shine and flourish and get the right people around him. But how would you suggest not only the Bears going forward the rest of this season, but in just shoot a few short minutes, like what do you see with what they need to do?
Yeah, I've been in this type of situation before, but it's a little different where the head coach was fired with games left to be played. Um, I've been in bad seasons where afterwards the coach was fired and then we had to figure out what to do. But
Yeah.
while in those seasons where don't have as many wins as you had hoped and the season hasn't turned out the way it should have, um, and there's been coaching issues and mistakes and here and there and all that stuff, I would like to see, as we talked about on a spiritual aspect, but on the Bears aspect, an identity come from them where the players, the parts and pieces on the field are the same. Um, Now it takes character, integrity, drive, sacrifice, hard work to not be in playoff contention and still go out there and say, I'm down to business. I'm out here performing and I'm gonna make the most of every moment. I think there is the reluctancy to say, we don't have anything to play for, so to speak,
Right.
uh, playoff wise, to take a back seat and kind of just pack it in and chalk it up to next year instead of actually working on chemistry within the team as far as how you run plays, the you know the concepts that you are running or um,
But
the
Matt, these guys are
continuity.
trying to play for jobs too, aren't they? I mean, like,
Hmm.
there's no guarantee in the NFL, not for long, right? So even when you're in a bad situation or a team that's not doing well, they're still trying to play for a job next year. And everybody's watching, even these games between, bad teams. Everybody's still watching to see how are they going to handle this if they want a job next year, right?
Yeah, I mean, what you put on film is important. I think that gets um, overshadowed by the lack of something to play for, so to speak.
Totally.
And
Yeah.
you never want to go out there and put on bad film. I was told that a long time ago. My dad always told me, "Hey, the eye in the sky don't lie. You on film loafing, it's always gonna get caught, or you're gonna get injured because you weren't going full speed." And and I experienced it. I remember playing around and being like, "Oh, we're winning the game," or we're up by, but I don't have to try as hard. Boom, you get injured.
Yep.
Um, so I would like to see them, continue to play at a high level and play for themselves, play for each other like you're supposed to do. When it comes to the leadership on the team too, taking over. If there's somebody who's practicing and they're like packing it in, and you can see that, man, I would go as far as being like, look, if you don't want to play, then don't practice. Like, don't waste your time, don't waste our time. Um, because when you do stuff like that, that's when there's injuries that happen that you may cause because you're slacking off and you're not doing your job, and somebody across the ball is out here that's like, look, I'm out here for blood every day, you know, and so what I want to see, I don't want to see them pack it in. I don't want to see the Bears pack it in and just say, yeah, there's always next year, because that's the easy route. That's the easy thing to do, and that's the normal kind of human rationalization of, let's just wait for next year, and then we'll be. You're not just gonna show up next year and all of a sudden be better. Start working on it now.
Hey, thanks for watching Sports Spectrum here on YouTube. You can click our next video, or you can check out our website, sportspectrum.com.